Hello there. Welcome to the Maker Manager Money podcast, a podcast to inspire entrepreneurs to keep going and entrepreneurs to just start. My name is Kyle Ariel Knowles, and today's guest is Ryan Rigterink. Ryan founded Leaders Ops, a platform dedicated to empowering leaders through strategic talent management and creating workplaces where people and results thrive. He is also actively involved with Workgaze, a platform focused on helping job seekers and recruiters find a great fit beyond the traditional resume. Since January 2023, Ryan has been simplifying the process of finding the right talent by leveraging Workgaze's data-driven insights into areas like motivation, growth potential, and team alignment. Understanding the challenges entrepreneurs face in building motivated and engaged teams, Ryan's experience with both Leaders Ops and Workgaze provides a unique perspective on attracting, retaining, and leading top talent for long-term success. Ryan is also the author of Redesign Life, Finding Purpose and Balance Amidst Chaos and Uncertainty. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. That's an extensive intro. Thank you.
Okay, where are you dialing in from today?
I'm up in Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan. How about yourself?
I'm in Highland, Utah, just 30 minutes south of Salt Lake City.
Nice.
Are you originally from Michigan then?
Yeah, I grew up in West Michigan. Went to school at Michigan State in the middle of the state, and then about 20 some years ago, originally for a job reload, came to this area, and we've been here ever since.
What inspired you to transition from traditional industries to founding Leaders Ops?
I did a lot of training and management and innovation across 4 different industries. The bulk of that was in healthcare. And in that process, I got to see I got a firsthand experience working with hundreds of businesses, as well as was kind of one of the people that a lot of people went to when things were not going well. And so leadership style, how people lead themselves and others, the culture that we create. I had an unusual front row seat to that, both on the individual human level as well as literally working in and out of hundreds of businesses. And so it became something that I saw was actually quite broken, and started to think about what kind of world I want my kids to grow up in, and what is the workplace that I want them to encounter, and realized that unfortunately that was the exception instead of the rule. And so that was sort of the genesis of kind of the heart motivation of why Leaders Ops came into existence.
That makes sense. And how do you believe AI and technology will continue to shape the future of leadership and talent management?
So, I have a strong perspective on this that, I'm sure there's a lot of other perspectives that are equally good and might be slightly different. I think what we're building with Workgaze is really leveraging AI and new types of insights that aren't just about like creating more data, but it's understanding or accessing more data and computation, which is, I think, one of the core benefits of AI, but to leverage AI into actually understanding ourselves and other people better. And so I think there's going to be major paradigm shifts that happen in leadership, and how the employer-employee relationship gets shifted and changed in terms of leadership's approaches. There's been an evolution of leadership across the pre-industrial revolution and then the post-industrial revolution. And now we're sort of entering, I think, a new phase where leadership's not just going to be about managing people. It's going to be about managing bots and technology and all the interactions that go into this. And so I think something that I talk about is called ecosystem management or ecosystem leadership, that I think is going to become more prominent, along with, new frameworks of understanding how roles are going to shift and how we can ultimately build better relationships and optimize creating value for each other as an individual or collectively as a team or company.
Okay. And let's go back before you started, your career, and you went to Michigan State, you said, and you got a bachelor's degree in psychology.
I did.
From psychology to being an entrepreneur, let's talk about your career before starting your own business, and how did the psychology degree kind of work into the initial jobs that you got out of college, and how has that helped you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I think some context that applies before that is even before I went to college. So I grew up in a family business, an agricultural business. And so I literally had started working alongside my father when I was 3. And he was very innovative and open-minded. And so I grew up literally in business and in leading. I was leading people older than myself, in my adolescent years. And so that business mindset and that entrepreneurial spirit was sort of what I grew up in. And so a very strange transition that happened in college was I went to school originally for crop and soil science and ended up switching to psychology, which is quite a leap. Those two interests of like the human piece and sort of the scientific piece have continued on in what I'm doing now and actually inform it from kind of both paradigms, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay, so right out of college, then what were some of the initial jobs? You worked corporate for a while, and what were some of those jobs before you started your own business?
Yes, I worked in nonprofit. I worked in direct sales and retail. I worked in real estate, which was entrepreneurial. I had some investments in that as well. I also worked in all forms of different healthcare across almost every specialty, from business development, sales, management, and then almost a decade in a specific area of healthcare called genomics and proteomics. So it's oncology, diagnostics, and really human-centered science, if that makes sense. It's actually called precision science or precision medicine. So something that had a predictive value for each person if a particular therapy would work for them was I was in that space, but also innovating new business models in that space. And so I've had this strange kind of road of a mix of science and analytics, very human-centered psychology and practical approaches, and then also this whole innovation piece. That eventually I actually developed a business incubator. So that was my first, I'd say, strong step into the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And have been in love with entrepreneurship ever since, from guest lecturing to helping fellow entrepreneurs to now working in a number of capacities.
That's awesome. And so, for the audience, to talk about this business incubator you started, what is it? What was it? And what kind of businesses did you help incubate?
At the time, I think Michigan was 50th out of 50 states economically. And we were in an area here that was one of the lowest within the state of Michigan in terms of just economic prosperity back at the time. And so the very practical way was, how do we help people and actually love people, if that makes sense, in a practical way, by not just platitudes or goodwill, but how can we do something that practically helps people? And so that was birthed out of that motivation of trying to practically help people step into autonomy and entrepreneurship and launching something that they could do either in place of or in parallel with their career. And so it was a bunch of different light commercial, from retail to just light service. So it was, I guess, a combination, if you think of it as a combination of brick and mortar and light commercial service. I think we had 34 businesses in there at one point. And unfortunately, that sort of went sideways in the real estate bubble crash. Some really bad timing on that piece of it, but learned a lot of lessons, met a lot of great people, and have leveraged some of those experiences in what I'm doing afterwards.
Were you working in healthcare before you started Leaders Ops?
I was, yeah.
So you're working in healthcare, and what was the aha moment for you to go, no, I'm going to go do something different? And did you do that all of a sudden, or did you do it on the side for a while? Just talk about what made you kind of make that decision to go at your own.
Well, it was sort of made for me. COVID happened, and so our entire department of the company was in an instant let go. And so I spent some time writing a book back in 2020. That's where the Redesign Life came out of. Was experience of probably the 15 to 20 years before that, but that was the period of time that was written in. And then it was sort of using some of my own things that I was teaching others to apply to myself. Like, what do I want to do next? What is my next step? And so that's what was the genesis, or it would have been. I had a great job at the time, and so it's probably, in hindsight, it's one of those things where it probably was good that I had that push because it's as you know, it's hard to leave a good situation to just take a giant risk. So
When you were let go because of COVID, and what was the I guess what made you decide to write a book during that period?
yeah, that's a good question. I think I had always wanted to. I had gone through quite a process where initially what became the book started out as more of a cathartic process of internal processing and writing as a form of just getting thoughts and things onto paper. And then it was rewritten and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten into a format that could serve other people. And so I think it just really provided the time and space for me to focus on it and not feel like I was, pulled in several other directions. I think if you're going to write a book, I could go back and do it now and carve out time and build that discipline. But that period of time with renewed margin really allowed for me to kind of focus and double down on that. So that was a kind of fortunate byproduct of that time.
Okay, and were you doing keynote speeches before the book, or did that come after you wrote the book?
Yeah, so keynotes came after, but it's interesting. I spoke at a conference and I was pulled aside by a couple professional speakers, and they basically said, "Have you thought about doing this professionally?" And I'm like, "Not really, quite honestly." It's like, "Oh, you're pretty good at it. You should think about doing it." And I'm like, "Well, I never really thought about it as an industry or a business." I had been speaking on behalf of companies, most of which in healthcare, for 20 some years, even training others how to speak and present and train and interact and things like that. And so the underlying skills were there, but I hadn't really thought about applying them in a professional speaking capacity for myself. So that was somebody else kind of helping me recognize the opportunity there.
Okay. How long did it take you to write Redesign Life then?
Well, that's a great question. It was the original manuscripts, which are not published, and I don't even think they're around anymore. That happened over the course of a couple of years before this. What COVID was me taking a fresh look at all this stuff that I had written and taking a look at how can I rewrite that in a way that can serve other people. And so I would say the original writing over probably 2 to 3 years, the rewriting, it's a good question. I would say probably over the course of maybe 4 months or something like that. It's a little bit of a guess on my part. I don't remember the timeline exactly.
Okay. And originally, when you were writing the manuscripts, then you I've gone through your book, and you were processing a lot of things, and the title itself, Redesign Life, in several different areas that you identify in here. There were, um, let's put it bluntly, maybe problems in different areas of your life, and you worked
Mhm.
through those. And the manuscript that you originally wrote was kind of working through each of these areas. And I assume when you had time during COVID for those 4 months, you were taking stories and different things you had sort of worked through as maybe like your original manuscript might have been more like journaling and kind of working through
Exactly.
how hard it was and the things that you did that helped, and writing down these stories, but then formatting it in a way that would be helpful to other people, and coming up with the questions and the frameworks that are found within Redesign Life.
If I can add to that real quick, I think part of what I would add to what I said earlier was part of it was also recognizing that I had gone through a process that, if I framed out that process, could serve other people. And so it wasn't just making sense of like the journaling content. It was recognizing that there was actually a path of sense making that I went through that actually was just exploration and trying to make sense of all this and certainly processing it. But ultimately it was the framework that came out of that asks the questions, provides the sort of buckets to think about these things, and a sort of a guided process for sense making that in and of itself reordered the content, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that was the goal when you tackled it for four months then.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got all these disparate pieces. Some of them were actual chapters. Some of them were things that, I noticed sort of pattern recognition that, all these things kind of are different pieces of this particular module of the puzzle. And then ultimately what came about was I launched a conference after that book called Accelerate Your Purpose. And it got actually further refined even after the writing of the book into kind of 3 macro domains: who we are by design, who we are by experience, and who we want to become by intention. And that middle one, that experience piece, is about understanding our own lens and our makeup, because as we experience things, it's unique how we experience it. And that helps inform not only what we're experiencing, but the experience that we're offering to others. And so it ends up being a pretty strong indicator, if you will, of where I found I had things that maybe I had scratches on my lens, or I had, certain things were distorted that were on my lens. And so it became really a relationship builder and a self-leadership kind of tool that you could think of that middle piece as almost like emotional intelligence on steroids. It's really not just understanding our emotional makeup, but how we view the world and how we experience the world and the things that have happened to us, and how we might then interpret what happens to others. And so it's kind of that piece, I think, is a great foundation for increasing empathy, for increasing understanding across differences of perspective. There's a lot of things in that particular piece that have served me and have started to serve some others as well.
And how does your book Redesign Life, how does is it complementary then to the businesses you're involved in right now with Leaders Ops and with Workgaze? Do you bring some of these principles into the workplace, or do you feel like it's more for outside of work and more, personal domain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was actually, you outlined kind of my journey. That Redesign Life and Accelerate Your Purpose was really about personal purpose in terms of sort of the context. And I ended up launching at a couple business colleges, universities, and then also diving into the organizational version of this, which is what really Leaders Ops is about. And so it's thinking about purpose management and leading ourselves from the inside out is sort of the first piece. And then the case study that I did that was really the cornerstone of what Leaders Ops offers to leaders of organizations is the organizational version of that. And so even within Workgaze, we've got 3 different types of insights. Which are all future present insights versus just recruiting and identifying talent based on what somebody has done in the past alone. That was one of the key paradigm shifts out of the case study was, we traditionally or historically, we recruit based on the past, we manage the present, but what both the employer and the future prospective employee wants is, how do we build the most valuable shared future? And realize that the infrastructure around hiring and managing talent and people is very one-sided towards an organization and is actually missing this individual piece. And so, in the personal purpose domain, it's who we are by design, experience, intention. In the fit connection and talent acquisition, it's the team fit, the motivation fit, and the career growth fit that are the parallel sort of equivalents that both employers and job seekers can now get greater insights into how to identify the places I want to work for the career I want to have and where I want to navigate to and who I want to become. And then vice versa, how do we identify hidden talent that maybe they're all their qualifications aren't perfect or 100%, but they're really vested in the future value proposition that we could offer them. And so it ends up being a predictor of engagement and retention by adding some of these missing insights into the more holistic 3D picture of people.
You talked about workshops that you took the book into universities, and it sounds like you did some courses and workshops and things like that. Are those still available? Do you have some online content related to Redesign Life that people can tap into?
Yeah, so I have Accelerate Your Purpose is sort of the personal purpose piece of that. So I do offer coaching and some cohorts from time to time on that. We're in the process of launching Workgaze in terms of that. So we're enrolling. You can join the wait list as if you're a job seeker or an employer and you want to gain these sort of different kinds of insights for that. And then I do through Leaders Ops have a few different offers. So AI and leadership, I offer a engagement package where it's basically a SWOT analysis, both on threat, strengths, weaknesses, threats in terms of your particular business, and really thinking about it from a future present perspective. Where could AI disrupt your value creation model, and where can it actually come alongside and amplify it? And so that's both innovation and sort of AI analysis on a business model approach.
Okay, and that's leadersops.com, where you can find
It
more
is.
information about that. And
Yes,
then Workgaze, GAZE.com is where you can find
that's
out more
correct.
information about Workgaze. And again, that's a platform. That's a software
It
as a
is.
service
It is
for
correct. It's.
for for what we were talking about earlier.
I did forget to mention I have a 8-week program that is really about re-engineering and redesigning the human experience. So, taking the insights that came out of the case study and the key paradigm shifts and some frameworks and applications where we had some phenomenal results that came out of that. But how do we apply that across every stage of the employee life cycle? And so it's sort of like if you think about you hire a designer and an architect, if you're going to build a human experience in your restaurant or whatever you're building, this is sort of the human equivalent of that, of how do we actually reverse engineer and greatly improve the interactions and the relationship between employers and employees that translate into what most employers are looking for, which is higher productivity, genuine natural engagement, discretionary effort, retention, like all the things we're after. This is building the right foundations to accomplish that.
Okay, and if you could summarize, what are 3 things that business owners or managers can do to help with engagement?
So one is directly correlated with one of the paradigms shifts is, what's much more powerful than one company vision is recognizing that everybody hopefully has their own vision for their life and their career. And so recognizing that as a business leader, I'm not just hiring people to serve my vision, but the more I can show up to serve their vision, the more people will be invested and accelerate towards self-management. And so it's recognizing that, getting curious about what is meaningful to each person, and then driving those conversations and just, hey, why do you work here? What is of value? What have you experienced that you love that, what would you like to see changed? I think if we can do those things and make those shifts and implement on that, it has a huge impact on really the human side of work. We all know practically, we've all had those bosses where we do what we have to and not anymore. And then we've got others that we will run through a wall for because we just know, they're there for us and we're really invested in that. And so I think it's when it comes to leading people, it's about a lot of these human elements that, we've optimized for efficiency. We've optimized for so many things in business, but I don't think we've optimized well for human experience and engagement. And that is really, it's about the individuals that work for you and understanding what's the value that I create for them beyond the paycheck, because they can go down the road and make, as much or in some cases more. I know lots of people who have actually taken a pay cut to go someplace where they feel valued, they're more invested, they enjoy the culture, the work, whatever. And so it's getting out of the paycheck mindset. Obviously, we work for pay, right? That doesn't go away, but it's recognizing that's only part of the picture is a good starting point.
I love that answer because I feel like a lot of companies, it's the company way, it's the company vision, and I like that kind of different approach where, of course, the company has a vision, but everyone that works there has their own personal vision of what they want out of their own career, and helping them succeed with their vision can help you succeed with the company vision as well.
Absolutely. It's kind of the golden rule in practice, right? It's if the organization is focused on helping their people, the people are more invested to help the company succeed. And so when you get both of those working together, it's a powerful combination.
Yeah, that's great. So we've talked about AI a little bit. What kind of AI tools do you use personally for yourself personally and for work? What kind of AI tools and workflows have you adopted?
Yeah, chat GPT is a big one. We're actually starting to experiment with some other models for Workgaze specifically. So building some automation bots on a number of different things. So personally, I get a lot of benefit just out of leveraging chat GPT. It's a great thought partner. It's probably the way I use it the most. But there's a lot of capabilities that I need to probably use it in more ways than I do in my current routines. How about you? What do you have certain tools that you use in AI and automation?
I'm bouncing between Perplexity and ChatGPT and Claude,
Yeah.
asking, doing similar prompts with each. And, with Perplexity, it's kind of replaced Google as my search engine, especially if I'm trying to learn something or find out something. But ChatGPT I like the best because, it's remembering all of our conversations. So
Yes.
over time, it really knows me like Claude doesn't. I like the way Claude writes, sometimes better than ChatGPT. It seems ChatGPT sometimes seems too kind of hypey or salesy, I guess.
Yeah. Market speak.
Yeah, and Claude is a little more maybe academic or um, less like salesy. So, but yeah, I'm bouncing between those three. But I haven't gone into automation, and I hear Zapier or Make and utilizing those is really helping people improve their productivity. So I want to kind of dive into those. Have you had an aha moment with AI or something you did with AI where you went, oh my word, this is amazing?
Yeah. I think several times where uploading a document like it's a search engine on steroids, but I've been really impressed with the granularity of using it as a thought partner. And sometimes I will put in what I write and I think very technically sometimes, and I put that in there, and then what it spits out is so much clearer in terms of communication, because sometimes I'm so in the weeds on a topic that I'm thinking about too many things and trying to articulate maybe too much at one time, and so it's been a great thought partner for not only offering a different lens at times, but also taking my own language and making it more effective and more succinct. And so that's been powerful.
I love it. One of the use cases that I did a few weeks ago was just to have ChatGPT. I just was going on a walk and I just used conversation mode and asked ChatGPT to read me the Constitution. And it's so amazing. I can't wait till we get to the point, and maybe there is some app out there that you can do this. But I would love to take, Redesign Life and have the audio version, or at least upload the
Yeah.
text and have ChatGPT read it to me, because then you can start asking questions related to anything. So you could say, go back to chapter 1 and remind me about, the questions at the end of chapter 1. What were those questions again? And you can have this whole conversation as you're listening to a book instead of just listening to it.
Yeah. It sounds like the future of reading right there.
Yeah, it's great, because then you have the teacher or the author, someone that knows the book intimately, can have a conversation with you about it.
I would even be interested in hearing ChatGPT's summarize the book for me. That's not something I've done, but that would be interesting.
Yeah, if you got the manuscript, you could just upload it and have it
Yeah,
summarized and start.
exactly. Yeah, you're giving me ideas. I love it.
Yeah. The other tool that I use a ton, and I use it, it's my secret for my podcast, and that's Notebook LM. It's by Google. I don't know if you've used it yet, but
I just heard about it, but I have not used it yet.
yeah, if you have a Gmail account, you can just go to notebooklm.google.com, and basically it allows you to upload. I think right now it's up to 50 documents. So I can go take your LinkedIn profile, I can take your website, you can, link to websites and upload transcripts or anything you want. And then it basically, that little notebook you just created is its own GPT. So then you can ask questions about the documents in there. You can have it analyze, you can have it summarize it, and then you can also click to generate a podcast from all those documents. So for all my guests, I listen to probably a 10 to 20 minute podcast about them once I load all these things in, and then I can write down different questions or things like that. And it will help me write intros and things like that.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you would forward that to me, I would love to hear what it produced for you.
Yeah, for sure. And you can just download the audio file. So I'll just text it to you and you can take a listen to it.
Excellent. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Okay, Ryan, I have just a few more questions to get to know you a little bit more personally. First of all, what's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
I'm working on a couple things that I can't disclose yet. That's honestly the first thing that comes to mind. Some things I can disclose. There's a talent coalition coming together in our region to really think about some of the things that I'm proposing and others are advocating for as well, that are the unification of the talent gaps and a lack of unification across high school, higher ed, and the workforce is a problem that is actually in some ways growing over time. And so we're looking at tackling that, and that's getting a group of PhDs in the same room, all with a heart and some pretty strong intellect to tackle that. I'm very excited about that. The other thing I'd say that I'm really energized about is we're actually doing some data infrastructure changes that are going to set up some really never seen before functionality on what we're building in Workgaze. So I'm excited about what's to come on that.
That's really cool. Ryan, what's your number one skill?
I don't know if my wife would agree with this, but I would say listening.
Okay.
Well, that is I've literally made a career out of asking questions. So I'm insanely curious, and I love to learn, and so I ask a lot of questions, and I have trained myself to not be thinking of my response, but to thoroughly, when I'm not distracted, let me throw that caveat in there. When I'm not distracted, really invested in their answer, not my response to their answer. And so that's accelerated my career. It's accelerated relationships. It's improved relationships, and it's served me well. I think if I had to pick one, that would probably be it.
I like that. And I think being a good listener, it takes asking questions to listen, right? I mean, so being a good question asker is also important. I've heard it said before, questions are the answer. So I love that you included in Redesign Life at the end of every chapter, there's some, questions that really make you think. I mean, this book is not something that you can like read in a week and be done with it, because the questions kind of take a long time to answer. If you go through each question, there must be, I don't know how many chapters. There's 31 chapters with questions at every chapter. There's 3 or 4 questions at least. And so that's a lot of questions to get through. So I appreciate that answer. And I think your psychology degree probably helped you with that as well, being a good listener and understanding a little bit about the human experience and human psychology.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have to credit my parents created an environment in our family that allowed for uncomfortable questions. And so that was also a part of my upbringing. There was some of this natural curiosity that I think some of it I have innately, and some of it I think was probably attributed to that. So I'm appreciating that more and more over time, quite honestly.
That's great. Sound like you had great parents.
Definitely.
When did you last cry the hardest?
Oh boy. You're going to make me cry on camera. When my dad died.
He must have had a really significant impact in your life, it sounds like.
Yeah, beyond worse.
What was his name?
Lauren.
Lauren?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how long ago did he pass away?
About 3 years now.
Okay. And I know you also went through hardship. You talk about in your book with finding out that your mom had breast cancer when you were 16.
Yeah, I was in high school. Yep.
Yeah. And then during, I guess the course, I don't know if it was writing the book. So years and years later, she passed away from cancer. Is that correct?
Yeah, she had cancer 3 different times throughout my, I guess, adult years and adolescence. So she beat cancer twice, and then eventually passed from it on the third time. So
wow, she really fought a lot. You talk about in here how she was going to beat it, and she had such a positive mental attitude about it.
And my parents were very innovative back in their day. They didn't just go with the first thing that was said to do. They did their own research and looked at a whole bunch of different approaches that were possible. And so, that innovative mindset and thinking critically and understanding even the industry that's informing our decisions and what's the context that that's coming out of, for good or for bad, or maybe limitations. So, I mean, we looked at remedies all over the world in that process. And so they talk about open-minded, critical thinking, willing to do what maybe most other people aren't. I mean, that was my father. So it was pretty amazing. But it's, what I write in the book regarding my mom is one of the jewels that came out of that was, I still remember in our living room where she got the news, and the doctor originally gave her 6 months to live. And so we had a large family crying session with obviously devastating news. And I remember her laying on the couch and all of us gathered around. And it was one of those moments where it was like she was giving her last words of advice. And anytime there's that type of context, right? It leaves a mark, and it's way elevated in importance. And I remember her telling all of us, love God, love people. That's it. And so it was profound because of the context and the moment that it happened. But we can talk about all these things that are complicated, and our world is getting more and more complex. And I can make something simple complex. I think anybody can. I think the real challenge is to take complexity and bring it down to something simple. And that was definitely a moment in time that was that.
It's amazing advice. Amazing advice at that time. And what was your mom's name?
Sharon.
Sharon. Okay. So Lauren and Sharon.
Lauren and Sharon. Yep. Legacy right there.
Yeah. That's so great. And you're carrying on the advice they've given and the lives they lived as well. So thank you for sharing that. Other than Redesign Life, your book, is there any other book that you recommend the most to people?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have hundreds, if not thousands, of books. This might be a strange one to mention, but there's one called Obviously Awesome. It's actually about marketing position, but I really love it in the process it mentally takes you through to think about. It can be applied towards so many things, because the paradigm and how we go about thinking about a thing actually sets the boundaries that we build within. And from a marketing positioning standpoint, it's powerful because it sets the context of which somebody thinks about your product or service. But it's so true from like even a personal identity or an industry or even a macro society paradigm. The reason I say that is because I'm now involved with what's really considered ecosystem entrepreneurship, and the core of that is actually changing the paradigm that people are thinking through. And that book is a guided process on how to think, and it's tailored for like marketing and marketing positioning kind of thing. But the underlying process, I think, is brilliant for applying towards a whole host of things.
Obviously awesome.
Yeah, it's a orange cover.
Okay. I'll check it out for sure. Now I have just a lightning round of questions for you, Ryan, and we can wrap up here just to get to know you a little bit better. What's your favorite candy bar?
Payday.
Favorite music artist?
Oh, probably Tim McGraw. I was going to say the particular song "Be Patient and Kind" I think is amazing.
Favorite cereal?
Oh, I don't eat cereal, but I would say growing up it was like Rice Krispies or Fruit Loops or something like that. But I haven't had cereal in a couple decades.
Mac or PC?
I use PCs and I aspire to use more Macs.
Google or Microsoft?
Oh gosh. I have mixed feelings about both.
That means you use both then.
Yes, I do.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. That's an easy one.
Phantom or Les Mis?
Oh, Les Mis.
And last question for you, Ryan. What's the worst thing about being an entrepreneur, and what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
Worst thing is it takes you headlong into unknowns, and all the worst problems are yours to solve. And so it's literally creating a map at times, and it's doing it in the context where we don't know what we don't know. And so it can be terrorizing. I'd say the best thing is also the flip side of that same coin. It is the ultimate personal development process that allows us to put something into the world to make a difference. And we get to put our fingerprint on that, which I think is amazing.
I love those answers, Ryan. Thank you so much for being generous with your time today. I've loved learning about Leaders Ops and Workgaze and learning more about Redesign Life, your book. And I can't wait to share your episode with the world. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation and even tearing up remembering my folks. So thanks for those questions as well.
Shout out to Lauren and Sharon.